There are certain lures that are synonymous with fall fishing, and a buzzbait is one of them. We have been talking a lot about all kinds of different lures and presentations in the last couple weeks for fall fishing, and one of them that I have not gotten to yet that I really wanted to talk about today is fishing a buzzbait. Works great in the spring, works great in the summer, especially those summer evenings, but boy, in the fall it can be a dynamite lure. So how do we know when it's buzzbait time? Okay, we've talked a lot about the fact that the bass are really getting on the bait fish, right? So when that happens, when you've got your bass are coming off those summer locations, those summer schools, and before they get into those big winter schools, there's kind of this in-between period where they spread out a little bit more. They're going to be chasing this bait all over the place. When you notice as an angler that they are spread out more than they normally are, a buzzbait is an excellent tool to be throwing during that time, because a buzzbait naturally covers a lot of water. Unlike the summer, where I like a summer evening just flat calm for a buzzbait, I like a little bit of chop on the water. Not a ton, not super gusty and windy, but a little bit of chop on the water in the fall, and I just really enjoy buzzbait fishing when it is like that. Now, there are a couple of different buzzbaits out there that I'm going to use depending on like the water temperature and how active I feel that the bass are. The one that I'm throwing right now is a toad buzz. Okay, it's just got that plastic toad on the back of a buzzbait blade, and the other one naturally is your standard silicone type of a skirt. So when am I going to throw one over the other? Well, when that water's just a little bit warmer and those fish might be a little bit more active, that's when I'm going to throw the toad buzz. It's considerably heavier than a standard buzzbait with a silicone skirt, which means that I have to go ahead and reel it a little bit quicker. It's definitely a faster retrieve. When I'm looking for that very slow, just gurgle, 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 gurgle type of a retrieve, when I want to fish that buzzbait as slow as I possibly can, that's when I'm going with a silicone skirt. So as the water temperature starts to drop, as those days start to get a little bit shorter, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over from the toad buzz to the silicone skirt. That's when I'm going to mix it up. Now, as far as the retrieve, there's a couple real key things to keep in mind here. One, the wind is kind of coming at us this way from the west, so I'm hitting this wind-blown bank a little bit, and I might even just shoot down this way some. But with the buzzbait, as you're covering that water, when you run across something that looks like, that should be a pretty good piece of cover, it should be holding some bass in there somewhere, you want to hit it from multiple angles. If you're working a point, even come to the situation where you hit the point like you normally would, then get the boat up there tight on the bank and throw back out. Hit a dock from multiple angles. That little bit of a difference can really turn the fish on as far as, which direction that buzzbait is coming, especially when that wind gets into play. Now, the other thing that I like to do with the buzzbait is give it a little twitch. As I'm bringing it back, just a small twitch, and it really throws the water. I mean, the water just really spits. And what that does is it mimics that fleeing bait fish, mimics those minnows or shad trying to avoid a predator. So just small twitches every now and then. And it just really just spits that water really, really nicely. So that is definitely something I would add to your presentation. And the nice thing about with that buzzbait, when those bass are spread out, man, it's just put the trolling motor down and start to cover water. Just cover some water. We are looking for fish that are a little more active, feeding, not those ones that are in a neutral mood, just kind of hanging out under, underneath a dock. We're trying to cover some water and take advantage of what should be going on with that fall bite. Now, what about the setup? What am I doing here? If I can get away with it where the water is definitely a little bit dingier, that's where I'm going to have straight braid on, okay, the whole way, especially if I'm in an area with a lot of brush and stuff like that. I will go straight braid. Otherwise, going with fluorocarbon, 20 pounds, 17 pound, that's all good sizes if you're going to go with fluorocarbon. If your water's a little bit clear, in this situation, I do have a fluorocarbon leader on some braid because this water here is ultra clear, super clear. Now, with that said, when you've got your braid and when you've got your fluorocarbon, those are low stretch or no stretch lines. And you know as well as I do, whenever you're fishing a topwater and it's a visual lure, we as anglers tend to pull that bait away from the bass way too soon. So just like you would, you know, when you're throwing a hollow-bodied frog, when you see that strike, wait just a second. Just the tiniest bit, just 1 second. One thing that I've really learned when filming underwater is that bass 99% of the time when they hit something, they reposition it. So they will attack a shad, bluegill, wood, crawfish, whatever it might be. They hit it, they grab it, and then they reposition it to make it easier to swallow, to go ahead and get down their throat. And if we set the hook too quickly, we're just going to pull it right out, right away from them. So just, I know it's hard, but wait just a second so you can get that lure in their mouth real good before you set the hook. Now, one thing that I definitely want to mention is when you're fishing a buzzbait, and this is especially true on really, really big reservoirs and lakes, is pay attention to where that bite comes from. There may be a good chance you can duplicate it. So if you're halfway back in a creek arm, you know, you can probably duplicate that pattern in another creek arm. If for whatever reason they really seem to be pinning up bait fish along grass lines on weed edges, go ahead and try to duplicate that. The same thing if they're pinning them up against chunk rock, try to duplicate it. So when you get a bite, really focus on where did that bite come from and see if you can repeat it in other places on the lake. And hey, speaking of, you know, throwing a buzzbait and good lures for the fall, if you would like to watch a video on what I think are the 9 best lures based on wind conditions in the fall, go ahead and check this one out right here. And hey, don't forget to go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.